thank you for participating in this workshop that Santiago is going to provide for us on the basics of water rights. And so, but I'm sure that a lot of you know Santiago. So I'll do a brief introduction. Santiago has been a leader in the acequia movement to reestablish acequias here in the South Valley. And he has put in a lot of good time into not only into reestablishing those systems, but also to help other communities in the South Valley. No, so it's been definitely collaborator on different projects, La Placita and many other projects, and so he's also a board member of our CESOS organization, the Center for Social Sustainable Systems. He's a board member with us, and so this is the first workshop that we organize around water rights and water customs and water culture, and we will continue to doing that under the interest that we have to extend and expand and stress the need to have at least the basic understanding about water rights. So for those who have them, can actually take a step towards protect your resource, or for those who are water advocates to have a better understanding of how acequia pre-1907 water rights work and all of that. And so anyway, the intent of this workshop is to move our community towards that intent, to have a greater understanding of water rights. And I'll pass it on to Santiago to start the workshop. Thank you.
Gracias, Jorge. I don't know if Lauren had an opportunity to introduce herself, but she's also a critical part of CESOS. Lauren, good to see you this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.
As well as some of my old friends and some new people I haven't met before. As president of the South Valley Regional Association and a mayordomo on the Don Gabino Andrade community acequia, I've learned the hard way through experience what water rights mean here in the Middle Rio Grande. I moved to the Middle Rio Grande in 1973. I got a farmer's home loan here in Pajarito for a half acre of irrigated land. And Farmers Home Administration then basically provided a loan, and it was very low interest at the time, and land was very inexpensive. So they built a house, and I was wanting to irrigate the land. There was an acequia running behind our property. It's a long lot, so we have a short frontage and twice as long length as such for the lot. But it then abuts a small community acequia. A community acequia is not maintained or operated by the Conservancy District, and so when I wanted to use it, I met our mayordomo, Don Ernesto Padilla, and of course he introduced me then to the customs and traditions, and the custom and the tradition and the custom is if you want to use the acequia, you got to help it clean it and maintain it. And so I was introduced to sacando la acequia, basically digging on the acequia to begin the new season. In fact, this morning we were working on the acequia in order to prepare for the coming season. So after that, a few years passed, and ultimately Don Ernesto passed away. Nobody took his place. Our access to the MRGCD operated lateral called the Ruby lateral from the Pajarito acequia a culvert rotted away. The street was paved over by the county, and we lost access to the acequia. But then in 2005, Don Gabino Andrade gave us permission to connect to his acequia. And he had a head gate then on the Ruby lateral. So that's when I learned that we had pre-1907 water rights. The New Mexico Acequia Association invited me to a conference and initiated training in which I learned that not only do we have pre-1907 water rights, basically prior to the creation of the Conservancy District, but also we have the right to manage and operate our local community acequias. And so by adopting bylaws as such. So let's go to the first slide, and we'll talk about, let's say, the origins of our customs and traditions. Acequia history. Let's start with the first slide of the Tribunal, or the Water Tribunal in Valencia. The first photo is of the cathedral. So can you zoom into that, Lauren? In front of the cathedral, yeah, there you go. Every Thursday at noon, the Corte de las Aguas de Valencia, okay, meets. And this court is made up of 8 sindicatos, kind of like mayordomos would be our term for them. And there's 4 on the left side of the River Turia that goes through Valencia, and 4 others from the right side of that river. And this water tribunal has been meeting every Thursday since 960 AD. So it's been over 1,000 years. And the mayordomos that operate these acequias then can enforce regulations and rules and laws. The man standing here with the hat on is the alguacil, so he's basically the enforcer on their behalf. And so Parciantes, basically members of the acequia, these, for example, these 2 persons, then can come and make complaints about, you know, they're not getting their fair share of water, or their neighbor is interfering with their receipt of water. And the court then sends the alguacil out to investigate, and the following Thursday makes a decision. So you don't have to file legal papers, and you don't have to go to a lawyer to be able to implement and maintain the diversion and the of water, which is critical. Also, this court is elected. It's not appointed by the King of Spain. It's not appointed by the mayor of Valencia, and it's always been elected. And it's basically independent, and it's recognized by the sovereign and the local authorities. So its decisions basically are final as such. So this works for an efficient diversion and separation, and so that everybody fairly gets their share from the River Turia. So these are the same customs and traditions that we practice here in New Mexico. So if we'll go to some of the other slides, we'll see what the plain of Valencia looks like. So let's go to that one. And so, as you can see, the fields are basically being surrounded, or have been surrounded, by the city of Valencia. And let's move on to the next one. Okay. This is the fountain, and there's 8 nymphs around the fountain representing the 8 acequias as such. And this is in the plaza where the cathedral is at. So let's go on to the next one. Okay, this is basically how water is diverted. And we use the same system in the Middle Rio Grande. Basically, you have what's called a weir. So it's not a full dam where it stops the water and makes the water back up. But basically the water has to go over this structure. It gets diverted into by this house here, in this structure over here. There's a big head gate that then gets the water pushed in this way and then out into the fields. So the same systems on the Middle Rio Grande as such. And we divert our water way up in Algodones from the weir that crosses there. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. Since their acequias are like 2,000 years old, they've already basically covered them with stone, and they're more like canals than dirt acequias as such. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah, there was a picture of a close-up of the alguacil. There's the chairs in front of the cathedral. Then there's some old pictures. Let's look at some of those. Okay, here's the annual cleaning of the acequia as such, which we still practice. The next one. Another field. Yep. Here's a big open spaces. Here's pictures from some old Cortes going back to let's see, what's this one, 1930 as such. And let's move on to the next one. There's the a close-up of the alguacil, the enforcer as such, the sheriff, it would be another term for him as such. And let's go, I think that might be the last one. Yeah. Okay, so these customs and traditions then have been practiced in New Mexico since the colonial period as such. So this is a fact sheet that we put together when we started reorganizing our acequias in the South Valley. And the greater part of the lands located in the South Valley were already irrigated at one time or another from 1700 to 1929. In the case of the Indian ditches since prehistoric times. And then the next important item or benchmark is in 1910, Herbert Yao. And he was a contract engineer for the Bureau of Reclamation or whatever federal authority was operating at that time. And what they did was they had to do a survey of all the acequias in the Rio Grande Basin. And the Rio Grande Basin basically runs all the way from Colorado to Texas and Mexico as such. So they started basically in Colorado and worked their way all the way down to Fort Sill, I think Texas, someplace like that, right there by El Paso or south of El Paso. So within the middle Rio Grande Basin, there were already 68 acequias irrigating 41,000 acres. Okay, and there was in his survey another 46,000 acres that could have been irrigated. And the reason that it wasn't irrigated was that there was too high a water table. Ecological damage had occurred in the Jemez Basin, which drains into the Rio Grande from the clear cutting of lumber for the railroads. And it tilted up not only the Rio Puerco, but also the Rio Grande. And so water then seeped in, has to go somewhere. So it basically used the aquifer to spread in the valley. So lands that had previously been irrigated prior to this 1910 survey had been now were considered alkali, only saltgrass would grow there as such because of the high water tables. Okay. So in 1926, the Conservancy District was organized, and basically its purpose then was to build levees along the river sides and that would keep the river within its banks, and also dig drains that would lower the water table and allow those additional lands to be irrigated that couldn't be irrigated initially in Herbert Yau's survey. So basically, those the water rights prior to 1907. The reason 1907 is used, that's when the state engineer's office was created, and the legislature adopted the current laws pretty much. They've been amended, of course, since 1907 many times, but the basic structure of the water laws in New Mexico are come from 1907. Prior to that, during the colonial period, it was Spain's water laws, and then of course Mexico's water laws. During the U.S. territorial occupation period, the territorial laws were also adopted, but they followed the same acequia customs and traditions and procedures and laws that were operating prior to that. So now the Conservancy District since 1930 is claiming 42,000 acres of water rights. And these are considered like post-1923 rights. Now, 1923 was when the Conservancy District law was passed. And so they're holding those lands that were drained. Basically, the Conservancy District has claimed those water rights under the 1923 Conservancy Act. And then by 1940, the acequias though continued to operate. Okay, there were contracts signed between the acequias and the Conservancy District, and the acequias still had mayordomos and comisionados, and that were elected then by the local landowners or parciantes. But then when the Conservancy District tried to dig through the Los Chavez acequia madre down by Los Lunas, as such, the Los Chavez acequia stopped them with, and they were armed, and they stopped the steam shovels from tearing up the acequia madre. So ultimately, things went to court, and the Supreme Court finally ruled that although the water rights remained undisturbed, the administration and delivery of water would now be in the hands of the district. So basically, they took over then what had been the job of the comisionados and the mayordomos. The board of directors of the Conservancy District were not elected. They were appointed by the Second Judicial, what's called Water Court, and basically it's one of the judges of the Second Judicial District here in Albuquerque. It's headquartered here in Albuquerque. So from 1940 up until like 1960s, that court appointed the Conservancy District directors, and the water was managed and delivered by the district engineer and what were called ditch riders. They would be the equivalent of our former mayordomos. And so likewise, though the Supreme Court found that there was no question touching upon the right to manage and control any of the side lateral ditches, not part of the official plan of the district, the ownership and control of which is admittedly in the landowners. So in other words, the Conservancy Act did not abolish the acequia laws that are part of the state. Okay. So what this means for us is that starting in 2005, with the help of the New Mexico Acequia Association, we reorganized our acequia associations. We adopted bylaws, and we elected commissioners and mayordomos following the state statutes. And so as such, there was 6 traditional and historic acequias in the South Valley, Atrisco, Arenal, Armijo, also known as Ranchos de Atrisco, and Los Padillas and Pajarito, that made 5. And then on the east side of the river, there was Lagunitas, was the 6th acequia. And so since then, we've elected, or like I said, adopted bylaws that can then govern the distribution on our local acequias. Also, we have contracts with MRGCD, so we're basically a partner. And in the beginning, there was a lot of opposition from newcomers, from people that wanted to gentrify the South Valley, and they saw the reemergence of the acequia associations as a threat. So we've had our legal battles to prove our legitimacy, and we've even gone all the way into the New Mexico Supreme Court to prove that we are legitimate and that our bylaws have the authority of law as a political subdivision of the state. So it's been real important. So part of that responsibility is not only keeping our own water rights, maintaining them, but also keeping them from being transferred and sold to development as such. So that's become a real important part of the duties now of the commissioners and mayordomos. So let's move on to the next page. So this fact sheet is both in English and Spanish for our Spanish-speaking and literate residents. Now the South Valley, I think, is majority immigrant, recent immigrant to the South Valley, rather than the old traditional families, and as well as new Anglo-American newcomers that have moved in and want to live the rural lifestyle, and basically the acequia lifestyle as such in the valley. Have the ability to have animals, horses, cattle, pigs, chickens, the ability to ride along the acequia easements and explore the acequias as well, since they crisscross the valley like the human circulatory system. So this was prepared, the Spanish translation by Jorge Garcia, and I think that's important because I, like many native New Mexicans, have lost our literacy in Spanish. I can still speak colloquial Spanish, but I'm illiterate basically when it comes to written Spanish, to be able to give information to our new residents. Let's move on to the next item, which was current legal issues. Okay, so what are the legal issues currently? As I stated earlier, we no longer have to prove our legitimacy. We've been recognized then as acequias. We no longer have we have standing, for example, in the local courts. As an example of that is enforcement of the right to irrigate, as an example. So if a landowner along the acequia interferes with or takes water without permission, or doesn't contribute their labor to maintaining and operating the acequia, they can be fined. They can be prosecuted in the local magistrate court, either by the district attorney or by the local commissioners and mayordomo. And on occasion, we've had to do that. District attorney is too busy with bigger issues than a local dispute between irrigators. But we were able to take advantage of our status as a governmental entity then, in order to take the case to magistrate court and get it enforced and get our water or access to water enforced and the acequia maintained. So that issue has been resolved. But then now we have a zoning and planning issues. So in this next paper by David Hinkle with the University of New Mexico Planning Department, it's on preserving a livelihood and community. He not only does he go through the history. If you'll just pan through that, Lauren, that'll, because it's rather long. But if you'll pan through the pages, basically he gives history, he gives background, uh, he talks about acequia culture, uh, the dependent variables, the impact of Anglo-American law, federal legislation, and those laws. Okay. Here's a nice map of the Taos Valley acequias as such, which basically take their water then from those laws. Contemporary acequia culture and planning. How do we deal with land use and subdivisions as such? And so he gives a lot of good information. These are the skills that we've had to learn. Oh yeah, here's a perfect example of a traditional acequia landscape. Basically, you have the diversion dam or ditch head where the headings of the acequias are located. We still have that same system here in the valley, both the North Valley and South Valley, basically. Uh, and then you have highline canals going along the escarpment, first on the right side of the valley and then the left, and on the left side. These then can divert water into the valley from that higher point. And then ultimately, whatever water is left over goes back into the river at the Deseawa. So this is a traditional system. This is the traditional layouts that we had in the North Valley and South Valley here in Albuquerque. Since then, of course, then now we have county commissions, we have a city, and so we're subject then to, in addition to these land use patterns, zoning, okay, industrial zoning, agricultural land zoning, residential land zoning, and also planning. You know what the county's going to do with the land resources within this area. So it becomes important, and we've had to learn how all of that system works. Don Lado Silva with the South Valley Partners for Environmental Justice, uh, you know, was critical in helping us learn how that system works and how we can file complaints. We can participate in the zoning of properties and the rezoning of properties, and how to deal with development plans that affect our water resources and our lands in the valley. So let's move on down, I guess. Let's see, through page 27. Okay, get down to 27. Okay, yeah, that's the end. 28 then. That's the next one. Yeah. Okay. So talking about planning. Okay. When we learned for that there was going to be a new subdivision or plan a new development on the Southwest Mesa, the developers came to the South Valley or to the Pajarito Village Association, our neighborhood association, to give a presentation. They were invited by our local state senator. And so that's when we learned about this proposed development for 90,000 people, basically another city on the Southwest Mesa. And that's now known as Santolina, the Santolina development. And this is on land that was previously owned by the people of Atrisco, part of the Atrisco land common lands, and it had been sold by the Incorporated Westland Corporation to a developer called Sunland. Sunland went bankrupt after the last recession in, what was it, 2008. And then Barclays Bank, which had loaned them money, ended up, foreclosed on it. Barclays from London, England, international bankers, financiers, and developers as such. Basically bought the land grant, common lands, and they decided they wanted to expand from the west side of I-40. I'm sorry, the north side of I-40, which is called now Estrella, where the volcanoes are located, where the new Amazon distribution center is, and a couple of other industrial plants. I think Tempur-Pedic is up there as well. So that had already been authorized and planned on by the city of Albuquerque and Westland Corporation prior to the sales to Barclays as such. But on the southwest side of I-40, no development plan had been submitted. And so at this point, Albuquerque Western landholders, which are out of Phoenix, Arizona, partnered up then with Barclays and decided they wanted to build a new development there of 90,000 homes. But there's no water. You can't have a place to live without any water. There's no potable water out on that on the top of that mesa as such, and whatever water there is so brackish that it's not usable. In fact, the Metropolitan Detention Center is out there, and it attempted to put in wells, but they were so brackish they were unusable as such, and probably arsenic as well. So there's no water in that location. So where's the water going to come from? And it has to come from the valley. It has to come from water that's already been appropriated for irrigation, water that's already been appropriated for municipal use by the now what's known as the Albuquerque Water Authority, and so there's no new water to be allocated for development. So it has to come from either the farmers in the valley or from the water authority. And the water authority basically has to get its water then from the farmers. So up until a couple of years ago, the water authority basically was trying to buy water rights throughout the valley. The other municipalities in the valley, as a result of there not being any extra water, also have to buy water rights. So that includes Rio Rancho, Las Lunas, Belen, Socorro. So even these towns, Bernalillo, have to obtain water rights to operate their water system as well. So that's the primary threat then to our irrigation water. So how it will be used. But we fought basically the plan as such. We joined together with the Southwest Organizing Project and the South Valley Coalition of Neighborhoods, the Center for Social Sustainable Systems, CESOS, who's sponsoring this workshop today. Of course, the South Valley Regional Association of Acequias, and then individual Parciantes, Daniel Rip Anderson, Marcia Fernandez, myself, Rod Mahoney at the time, Roberto Roybal, and Dr. Virginia Necochea, who's now the executive director for the Western Environmental Law Center. And she was a former executive director of the CESOS organization. So, and the appellants then are the County Board of Commissioners and the commissioners themselves, Debbie O'Malley at the time, Maggie Hart-Stevens, Stephen Michael Quesada, Lonnie Talbert, and James Smith. Basically, Quesada, Talbert, and Smith adopted the Santolina plan. Debbie O'Malley and Maggie Hart-Stevens opposed it. And as a result of our attending those meetings, informing them, that the water would have to come from our community, and that it would destroy our way of life and basically dry up the South Valley as such. So those, with the help then of the New Mexico Environmental Law Center, these are their attorneys that filed these legal papers or court papers. We filed suit after the county adopted the Santolina plan. First, Plan A, Plan B, and the zoning plan. We challenged them in the district court in Albuquerque. It's been, I think, 4 years since we started this process. And we won one of the issues, which was that they violated the zoning provisions. And the zoning provision requires, it's a quasi-judicial process, and the county commissioners are supposed to maintain a neutral position until they hear all the parties before making a decision. However, at the time, the county commissioner, let me see I can't even remember his name anymore. Anyway, he spilled the beans. He went to did an op-ed in the journal. In fact, we defeated him for a state representative position here in the valley this past year. Got even with him again. So, but anyway, he put an op-ed supporting the Santolina prior to the hearing in which a decision was to be made. So that gave us grounds then, and we won at the district court. The county appealed it. The developer appealed it. We went to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals ruled in our behalf, or in our favor over the zoning again, but went ahead with their adoption of the plans. And so we have a split decision. Basically, the zoning hasn't been resolved, but the plans are still in place to build this subdivision. So this is our latest petition to the Supreme Court now. It's called a petition for writ of certiorari. And it's, I think, what is it? About 150 pages, all of it. And so you can see the work and the professional work that we need in order to be able to protect our land and our water and participate in this process. There was no way that we could have afforded to pursue this first through the district court and then the Court of Appeals and now the Supreme Court without the help of the New Mexico Environmental Law Center. And SWAP was the one that connected us to the New Mexico Environmental Law Center. So we're still at it, even today. And Santolina still hasn't been built, still on the drawing board. So we're hoping to defeat the Barclays Bank through 1,000 cuts as such, and just keep stalling them as long as we can. So we'll see what happens with the Supreme Court, what its decision final will be, whether the case will be remanded back to the current county commission for the zoning deal as well as the plans. So we don't know how long that'll take. It might take 6 months. It might take a year. It might take 2 years. Who knows? Basically, it's up to the court. First, this petition has to be accepted by the court, and then the court will go about the process of scheduling at some point. So we'll find out what these petitions that we've submitted ultimately will result in a hearing, and not necessarily even a hearing. The court can make a decision without conducting a hearing, simply from the record as such. So that's pretty much what the legal issues are today. Other legal issues at the legislature that we haven't really even talked about is the immediate temporary transfer of water rights to industry by the state engineer. New Mexico Acequia Association has been fighting that practice, and actually it's been found to be illegal by one district court down in Carlsbad, where water rights were transferred by a potash company that they wanted to use, to put on the marketplace, and the district court down there ruled that they had violated the law as such, but the state engineer appealed that as such, and so we're still fighting that battle because current law requires, and we'll get into that, and that basically goes into the next thing. Well, actually, the next thing is going to be, how do you declare water rights? How do you protect, and then following that, how do you protect water rights? So let's move to the next item. In fact, then we'll get into this deeper as we go along. But let's say, okay, you live here in the South Valley. You want to know whether you have pre-1907 water rights or not. Let's move on to the next portion, which is page 185. And everything you want to know about county planning is in that petition to the Supreme Court. So if you want to really delve into it, you can find the county planning rules and regulations, etc., there as supporting document. Okay, so how to declare water rights. Okay, so this is a map. In fact, this is map number 41 here in the Middle Rio Grande. This is the Rio Grande River. If you can point to that, I'm pointing at it, but Lauren can't see. Anyway, that open space where it says US 109, US 110, okay, that's the Rio Grande. This is basically two maps, a 1917 map and a 2004 map. And so one is laid up on top of the other. So the 2004 map then are all these blue parcels, all the basically lands that have been subdivided and are now residential. Up here where number 42 is, that's a Bridge Boulevard. Okay, so this is south of Bridge. This the line with the arrows on it, right down, kind of like right down the center. There's a black line. Yeah, there's one. Okay, that's the original location of the acequia. That the one she's pointing to there is the Arenal acequia. The next one over to the right, there's another one that comes down. That's the Armijo acequia. And then within that area, you'll see notations. Cultivated class 1 at the very upper right hand corner. Yeah, cultivated class 1. And there's like a dotted line. And then you see brush below it. And then there's another dotted line along Bridge Boulevard. And then within this dotted line is cultivated class 2 lands. Okay, so all of these lands then basically were irrigated or cultivated. They were actually able to grow crops in the 1917 survey. So if your property, and in this case, we have the property of one of our newest members, okay, which I highlighted in red. Okay, his property is located in right next to the dotted line of cultivated class 2. Okay, so he has the state engineer will recognize automatically his pre-1907 water rights. Right? So that's critical whether your property, for example, is within one of these cultivated areas. You can't see what the label is for the property south of that dotted line, but it's alkali. And so the state engineer won't recognize your pre-1907 water rights because it wasn't cultivated in this map. But there's other evidence that you can seek in order to prove that you have, that the land was in fact irrigated at one time. So this is the critical point. Okay? And unfortunately, these maps are really hard to negotiate or to figure out, where am I? How do I find my property on this? So that's what the South Valley Regional Association does for its members. We find your property on these maps and identify whether it has pre-1907 water rights or not. If we'll look down, we'll look at the property. It's the property at 1030 Belcher Road Southwest. Yeah, through simply through the Bernalillo County GIS system, we were able to identify how many acres it was of the property, 0.31. Okay, identify the location on what's called the grid, Township 10 North, Range 3 East, Section 30. All this information is necessary to complete the water right declaration. Let's go down a little bit lower. We'll see who the owner is. Oop, missed it. A little bit more. Okay. Oop, yeah, I left the name of the owner off. I'm sorry. But anyway, legal description. Basically, since it's been subdivided, now it's lot 14 of the Belcher edition. So that's necessary in order to complete the water right declaration. So basically, the address, the acreage, the township on the grid, of course, this map 41, and the legal description, lot 14, for the property. We'll go down to the next page, which is the cover page of the water right declaration itself. Okay, so I think this was Mr. Foreman. Is that right? Foreman's property on Belcher. Is that right, Jorge?
What was the question, Santiago?
Yeah, the property on Belcher, was that Mr. Foreman, the new member that joined up?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So basically his name would go in there. If somebody if he's not available, and many times like water right brokers, they're selling water rights. Okay, they become the contact person. So they put their name in there as an example. Okay, the address of the water right owner, city, state, etc., telephones and email. Okay, location of point of water diversion. Okay, all our water in the valley, both North Valley and South Valley, comes from Angostura. Okay. That's that weir over on Algodones. So you would check that box there, for example. All right. Okay. Name of ditch or acequia. Okay. If we look back at the map, Mr. Foreman's property is right here next to the, looks like the Arenal sec. Oh, wait a minute. That's not the Arenal. That's the Armijo acequia. This is the Rogers Lateral over here on the other side of Isleta Boulevard. Because that's what this line here in the center is. Yeah, so it's the Armijo acequia. Okay. Let's move on down to the other page again. So we would write in the name Armijo acequia. Can you type that in, Lauren? No?
I don't think it's going to let me.
Yeah,
it's letting me.
this form is available online through the Office of the State Engineers website under its forms menu. And So, and when you download it, you can fill it in, right from your computer rather than having to print it out and write and fill it in. So, so anyway, let's move on to the next item. Total acres of land described. Okay, so in this case, it's a point or 0.31. Okay, so basically a third of an acre. Okay, the NRGCD map number is 41. The tract number or legal description basically is lot 14 of the Belcher edition. The acres in each tract, 0.31. The section then was 10, the town, or section was 31, the township was 10, the range was 3 east. Okay, so that would complete basically the legal description of the property and our place of use. The place of use is on land owned by Mr. Foreman, basically the person making the declaration.
Santiago.
David, yes.
So the first thing that the person has to do is to get a copy of the map to be able
Right.
to is to make sure. So first thing is the map, and the map will give you all this information that you need for the place of use.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
And anyway, the place of land, they've told us or told me when I first filed my application in 2005 was put declarant, basically the person in general term, the person making the declaration, declarant as such. But I guess you could put your own name in there if you're making the declaration. Okay. Are there other sources of water for these lands? Okay. Yes, if there's a well with and you have and that well has a file number, then you would say yes. Okay. In many cases, you don't have a file number. Okay, most of our wells are hand, people put them in themselves, hand driven, and so they didn't need to get a license or a permit to do so. And in fact, if you have pre-1907 water rights, you don't need a permit from the state engineer. But in order to get a well drilled by a well driller, you need a permit from the state engineer. So there's they get you one way or the other as such. If you drive the well in yourself, then you don't need no permit as such. But you can only use it if you transfer water rights for a crop or what's called row cultivation, for commercial type cropping or farming. If you transfer water rights from the acequia as such, and we'll get into that later on. So as a rule, you usually put no, okay, unless you have a permitted well with a permit file number. Okay, so the next question is, let's see, diversion amount. Okay, so we got 0.31 times 3. Okay, so that's 9.3. So basically, 9.3 acre feet of water is legally diverted from the Rio Grande for this property each season. Or let's say that's what it's allowed. And 9 acre feet is like over 1 million gallons of water. So consumptive use, okay, there's a formula that's used by a state engineer, and that's a 2.1 acre feet. Basically, they take into account the travel from where it's diverted in algodones all the way down to your backyard. There's 9/10 of an acre feet of water loss as such through the system. So this is called what's called a farm use or consumptive use amount. So this would be like 6.2 acre feet of water. This is the amount of water that can be transferred and sold by a pre-1907 water right owner or leased as well. So let's move on to the next page. Okay, so purpose of use, irrigation. That's the key right there. Okay, so what you have to do is claim that you would use this water, that you use this, in fact, use this water to irrigate your property as such. Water was first applied for beneficial use. Okay, here it would be with the founding of the Atrisco Acequia. I mean the Atrisco land grant, 1681. So you're looking at the water rights thing that go back several hundred years. But basically, the state engineer won't recognize anything earlier than 1896, when there was a previous survey done of acequias. Uh, and so there's so there's all of that. But we insist on putting 1681 as a part of the Atrisco land grant. So we put that down. And then we say that's why, that this land grant was founded. And we have some documents to back us up that we can submit then with the application to support that. And then the next item was, and basically what you're saying is it's been used fully and continuously for the above described purpose, meaning irrigation, except as follows. Okay, if there's a house on the property, with a permanent foundation, okay, that portion of the property can no longer be irrigated as such. And ultimately, it's excluded from any water right transfer as such. There's a couple other standard things. A barn, a corral would be other things as such. Another thing that can happen is you could have been cut off by your neighbors from access to your local acequia that's operated by the MRGCD, or the physical structure was in fact has been abandoned and lost as such. So those could be reasons, but I wouldn't file or attempt to file a declaration until we restore irrigation to that land. Okay, so you can restore irrigation even if there was a break, and still basically recover your water rights as such. So that's one of the things that we want to or try to help our members do as such. If they live on land, on abandoned acequias or abandoned easements, how can we work with them to get them restored as such? And additional statements or explanations. Okay, here's they've added this red line down here. Let's take if you can zoom in on that, Lauren. Yeah, a declaration may be accompanied by a map. Okay, so that would be our map 41 as an example, where that's highlighted Mr. Foreman's property. Okay, let's move along so I can't see the rest of it. Let's see. Pursuant to, I guess this would be a statute 1926-2-26, and may be accompanied by deeds, survey plats, affidavits. Basically, the previous owner, Don Gavino Andrade, could do an affidavit says I've been irrigating this property now for, since I lived here in 1930, as an example. Okay, and other evidence tending to substantiate the claim. So, like I said, we have other documents that we could submit on your behalf to support your claim for this pre-1907 water right. Then you have to sign it in front of a notary. So that's, and if you sign that in front of the notary, then you can mail this application in triplicate to the local office of the state engineer. And they will review the documents that you've submitted and issue you a pre-1907 declaration of water right ownership as such. So this gives you standing for the next thing that we're going to talk about. How do you protect your water rights? Okay. Any transfer of water rights from our community have to be published in the newspaper before they can take effect. Okay. And the Office of State Engineer now, as a result of work and lobbying and changes in legislation, now will post the publication, the document that's supposed to be published in the paper online. So, so you don't have to skim the newspaper every day to find out if somebody's transferring water rights out of your community. So, so you can go to their website and find out whatever water rights are being transferred from Bernalillo County or within Bernalillo County, as an example, or to another county as such. We didn't have to use this. One of our comisionadas wife, Marcia Fernandez, was also a litigant in this, in our Santa Lina suit, basically does look at the publications in the legal publications in the paper looking for water right transfers. And so she found one from her acequia, the Arenal acequia, to Los Lunas that would transfer water rights from their acequia. And so we suspected that it might be, you know, for the Facebook plant or something, you know, one of those, because Los Lunas is basically providing water to Facebook and their expansions as such. Well, it turned out to be to a parcel that where water rights had been sold already to, so they wanted to restore their pre-1907 water rights to this parcel, the current owners, because the previous owner, a dairy, basically had sold the water rights to Las Lunas as such. So, so it was important to them. I think they're an investment company though. So I think what they want, basically what they want to do is tie up water rights because they know that the prices are going to keep going up and they would have water rights on this property to sell as such. So we went into the next point, which is objections and protests. So if you own water rights, if you've declared your water rights, you have standing to object to this transfer. So, so several parciantes, including the commissioners of the Arenal acequia, filed protests with the Office of the State Engineer to the transfer. And so, so basically the protest says impairment. For impairment, you must specifically identify your water right. Okay, so like I said, if you have a pre-1907 water right declaration, then you have a standing as such. You can make that claim. Okay, the reason then would be public welfare, the conservation of water. You must show how you'll be substantially and specifically affected. It's really basic. Like I said earlier, all our water is diverted over in Algodones, 3 acre feet. If the water rights are transferred from basically the Arenal acequia to Las Lunas, those 3 acres won't be diverted over in Algodones. They'll run down to Isleta, where there's the next diversion that goes into Valencia County, and it'll be diverted there. So we would lose basically that 3 acre feet being diverted, not only to the Arenal acequia, but in fact to all of our South Valley acequias and North Valley acequias, as well as the pueblos of Sandia and Santa Ana there in Bernalillo County as such. So so that's the basic reason we give how we're substantially affected. Okay, and so it's a protest is only costs $25, so it's not overly expensive. The problem though is that in order to pursue this, it's a administrative court, and you can represent yourself, but if you want someone to represent you, they have to be a lawyer. So that makes it really hard to pursue unless you can get a lawyer to represent you. Also, usually the applicant has lawyers, so you're up against a really a tough deal, requiring legal expertise as such in order to file responses to motions, etc. So it's a very complicated process. However, it takes a year or more for that process to proceed. So as soon as you file that objection, basically the whole thing had stopped. And it'll stop for a year or longer, as such, until it can finally be adjudicated by that administrative court, as such. So we've used this effectively to stop then any transfers from our local acequias without permission. And we're talking about we can permit water right transfers from our acequias. And so let's move on to the next page. Okay, through our local community acequia bylaws. So, for example, this is the Arenal Community Acequias bylaws. The objects and purposes of this acequia are in accord with the provisions of the New Mexico State Laws, Chapter 73. Those are the water laws, both surface water and groundwater laws, and New Mexico statutes as amended. And we're a political subdivision of the state. Our role is to provide surface water to fulfill the needs of our members, promote conservation and beneficial use of acequia water rights, and to govern the acequia in order to protect this benefit to member parciantes in perpetuity. And so it goes on to describe the acequia, its founding in 1692, its a modern point of diversion in algodones, who's eligible to be a member or parciante, how the officers are and elections are conducted, and so on. So it's pretty comprehensive. It's based on a template that's provided by the New Mexico Acequia Association to any parciantes that wish to do that. And they have an education program where they will assist local parciantes organize and not so much organize, but once people do get together, assist them adopt these bylaws and provide them with assistance in doing so and consultation as such. So let's move on to page 180, no, 190. Well, we are on 190, 194. Yeah, 190. Water transfers. So we members of the Arenal declare that a transfer of water right off the acequia or a transfer of water right into the area served by acequia may be detrimental to both the acequia members. Therefore, any proposed transfer by any person or entity must formally be approved by the commissioners using procedures set forth prior to application or transfer to the Office of State Engineer. Okay, so we've adopted this provision according to state law 73-3-4.1, which was lobbied for and gotten passed by the New Mexico Acequia Association to protect our water rights as such. So the procedure then goes on. So when we learned that water rights were being transferred by a family, basically that no longer irrigated off of the Arenal acequia to Las Lunas, they were going through a broker. Never did say how much they were going to get for the water rights. We then informed them that in order for their application to be accepted by the state engineer, they would have to obtain the approval of the local commissioners and basically the rest of the community. Okay, because this process requires then that a public meeting be held, which was held, they attended the meeting, gave their reason, basically, and it was a good reason. They didn't want to lose the water rights for non-use. So they would rather sell them than lose them for forfeiture or abandonment as such. So that was a good reason. However, it was still detrimental. It would still be detrimental to the rest of the acequia members. And in fact, they could lease those water rights to the water bank as such to other farmers if they wished. Okay. Right now, MRGCD goes ahead and uses their water in its water bank, which this year they've had to close because there's not any water to be shared, any surplus water as such to be shared with people that have sold their water rights as such. So now it's coming due for those farmers that sold their water rights. They can no longer lease any water from MRGCD's water bank as such due to the current conditions. So this is the other way that water right transfers can be stopped, and it doesn't require hiring attorneys, and it doesn't require filing legal motions, etc. It's done in a public meeting in which the public is given the opportunity to voice their opinions. The parciantes that want to transfer the water rights are given their opportunity to explain why, and the commissioners then make a decision following that public meeting, and it's quasi judicial, so they can't decide ahead of time to deny the transfer. Basically, they need to hear what do the people that want to make the transfer say, and what do the other parciantes have to say before making that decision. So that's so the rules of civil procedure and rules of evidence don't have to apply. So you don't have, it doesn't have to be that complicated. So it's in the tradition of the Corte de Valencia, okay, that the landowners, through their elected officials and water rights owners, decide then how that resource will be managed as such. So it's a continuation. So this is pretty much how water rights then are being protected now by the Sal Valley and the members of the Sal Valley Regional Association of Acequias, Atrisco, Armijo, Arenal, Los Padillas, and Pajarito. We still haven't reorganized Lagunitas, unfortunately. So I'm open to any questions, or if you have any comments, Jorge, Lauren.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have one small question. Thank you so much, Santiago, for that super comprehensive and everything was super awesome. I have to admit I had a couple phone calls I had to take, so I missed a couple parts of it. But being up in northern New Mexico too, that kind of was my question about the relation of acequia governance systems between Middle Rio Grande and like northern New Mexico.
Yeah, the acequias in northern New Mexico don't have conservancy districts to contend with. Yes, so we have a dual administration with the conservancy district and our local laterals, basically, to come off of the district's works.
Thank you.
Santiago, I don't personally, I don't have a question, no, but there is a question in the chat, no, and so my question is that whether those maps are actually available online. The maps.
Yeah.
Maps.
Yeah, we have them at the Sal Valley Acequias.org website. Okay, there's I think it's 106 maps all the way from Cochiti down to Socorro.
And it's a pretty straightforward. I mean, if we send the webpage to people can actually get to the maps, Santiago.
Yeah, they're part of, they're on the menu, on the homepage menu, when you, basically scroll through the first line of the menu, and it shows you what's available, what other pages are available under that line.
Okay. No, we'll make sure to share the link and all of that on an email. But that's great to know, because when I think that when people are thinking about water rights, everything is complicated. Everything about it. Starting with the notion that you have to deal with state engineer. There's already and lawyers, and there is already this sense of complication that for community members is scary. But I think that the way you should, at the end of the day, it's just part of a process, and just to you're right that it's very difficult to do it without lawyers for the most part, but you're also right that it has been proven that we can do it without lawyers. It all depends
Yeah,
on.
we can, and so that's critical. But when we did that, when they denied the water transfer from Arenal, we did have the help of a lawyer that the Mexico Acequia Association provided, that consulted with us. She didn't represent us as such, but she consulted with us and gave us pointers on to make sure that we would follow the proper procedures.
Yeah. No, that's why I think that for anybody out there who's interested in declaring the water rights and protecting them, I think it's wise to fully understand how the system used to be in the old times. How the irrigation process was and all that, and have a clear picture to make the argument.
True, and but that our role then is to help our members, like I said earlier, basically get through this bureaucratic process, and so we found the ways that can be done, that it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like we have another question from Angelina.
Yeah, so we declared our water right, and someone from the state engineer came out and looked at our property. And he suggested that, like, from the aerial photos previously, it looked like it had been abandoned, but it was just covered in elms. So he could really see the actual land. So, I mean, there's a possibility that they'll declare the water right abandoned. Do you have any advice for how to deal with that?
Yeah, I do. We had to go through that process at the Chavez farm, La Placita. Okay, we were able to prove, and in fact, there's a case, the Rosa de Castillo acequia up in Placitas, where once again the Supreme Court ruled that they couldn't take away your water rights without giving you notice. And not only that, even if they didn't give you notice, if you resumed irrigating them after any period, then you still maintain them. So we fought that battle at the Chavez farm when we wanted to put in an irrigation well, and the state engineer said, "Oh, you haven't used this," or he hadn't irrigated his property for 16 years. But he hadn't built a house on it, and he hadn't paved it over, so it was still fallow. And we resumed irrigating it, and we were able to prove up basically that he still had water rights. Because in order to forfeit the water rights, they have to give you notice. And the state engineer, since the forfeiture law was passed in 1965, hasn't given anybody notice. So basically they use the abandonment, and it's not even a water law. It's basically a property land law, saying that, if 16 years or more court has ruled, you've abandoned an easement, as an example, as such. But like I said, basically your land is being irrigated now. And if your application was denied, then we would help you file. We've gone through that process. We'll help you appeal it and go through that process just like a water right transfer.
Thank you so much. We're so
Show you
grateful you're there.
They did, Angelina, just so you know, the same thing happened to me. Even after I declared my water rights, when I went to ask for a diversion from the acequia to the next another well that I use for irrigation, and they said, no, you don't have a water right. So yes, you can fight it. I think that the other thing is that, you know, how do you prove that you haven't abandoned your water rights, right? Well, one of the suggestions that we always do to people is right away, you know, you're a member of MRGDC, member of the acequia, because that already shows the intent. You yourself, as the owner of the house, you cannot abide for anybody before you, but you yourself is not you're not abandoning your water rights. And like Santiago said, no, if you don't have notices that you were told, then they fail to fulfill their responsibility as well.
Thank you.
I'd like to add something to that. I recently learned, you know, the MRGCD amended its water right rule. I mean, its water bank rules this year, basically to prohibit. Well, they won't lease any water because of the debt that we owe Texas. Is the primary reason, as well as the lack of water that is expected as such. So, but in reviewing the changes, I also found a provision in the water bank laws or water bank policy that when somebody leases water from the water bank, the district not only identifies what property the water is going to, but also what property they took it from. And this is usually pre-1907 water right lands that are no longer being irrigated. So ultimately, we haven't used that information basically to prove up that even if you're not irrigating, the Conservancy District is using your water to irrigate somebody else's land. So it's still being put to beneficial use. So I think that'll be another tool that we can use as such to support our claims that that our water rights have not been abandoned as such. So that's something new. So that's something I want to pursue. Also, the Conservancy District is considering paying people basically for depositing their water rights in their water bank. So ultimately, I think with this information, we can get them to pay everyone that they're using water that's not being put to beneficial use on their own land, which would be I think that would really prick people's ears up that they want to claim their water rights as such.
Bueno, quisiera darle las mil gracias a ustedes, a Santiago, especially for all these years of really hard and difficult and diligent, concentrated work that you put into it. Jorge también, as Amarlo, and also for the diligent efforts of developing the organization of CESOS. So critical that we continue to do that with the other organizations here in the Valley. I'd like to see if somehow I can help to set up these kind of presentations on the other side of the mountains, all the way from La Joya, Land Grant, Manzano, Tajique, Carruel, San Pedro, and all of those different localities to ensure that they are preserving their water rights, because we're going to be facing a big onslaught here in the next few years with the stuff that's going on, especially if the legislature changes with the reapportionment, with the redistricting. We could have a big impact on the advances that you guys have laid the groundwork for. Gracias otra vez. Que les vaya bien. Nos vemos pronto.
Padrito Lauro, le agradecemos mucho también. It's good to see you over this system, compadrito Lauro. But you're right. I think that if we put attention to the issues that are coming up as far as water, drought, and all of that is concerned, híjole, I keep looking at the maps. I don't know if I start crying or, but it's very dark. It's not looking good at all. It's not looking good, and so it's very difficult, right? Because look at, here we are in the middle of entering a really major drought, in my view. Entering, I'm saying, only in terms of another level of the drought, because we've been in the drought for a few years now, you know. And so it's kind of ironic that here is the drought, and here is we organizing to protect water that technically doesn't exist. No? And so, but I think that the point that we have always thought about is, number one, whether there is water or not, there is a constitutional right to the water that people owns in their properties or that are associated to their properties. That's not going away unless, you know, they somehow take you right away because of no use or for whatever other reason, right? But that's our right. And so the logic of the organizing of the acequia associations is to continue strengthening the consciousness, the culture, the values, the history, because we are moving, in my view, towards a cliff. The way our society is really, you know, putting the environment in a very delicate space, right? And so that's going to affect us, especially us over here with the water, you know. So in my view, anything that we can do to protect the little water that we have, and in that quest, implement systems that can bring the community together. They can take us back to the understanding of community, because let's be frank, one of the reasons why this society, our society, has been driven, you know, to a cliff is not only because it's a capitalist community country where, you know, making a profit is the most important thing to do, but it's just because, you know, we have lost consciousness of actually being part of something greater than just you know, a life of some level of privilege or another, no. And so our logic is that, no, even during these really difficult situations, we have to aim to help to reestablish and protect the water, because it is within the knowledge, the history, and the values that adaptability to the new times is going to be fully needed, in my view. No, and we have the privilege as a community here to have most of the elements that can actually help us to adapt to what it seems to me will become a new norm. No, and so how do we get there? We have no consciousness about being an agricultural society, for example. No, but you know, I think that the work of Santiago, Compadrito Lauro, and many others show that it doesn't really matter, because we can actually acquire and develop that concept. I mean, look at it, Agricultura Network. No, and what was it, 10 years ago? There was no organic farming, very little farming to that extent. No, everything with the work of Lauro, David, Santiago, and many others, that flourished and came. You know, and it's not a huge enterprise, but it's a very beautiful enterprise that is flourishing from within this community. So it is possible. It is possible. But as with everything, we have to get to the basics, and the basics is water rights 101. No? Make an attempt to protect and know what to do to protect and preserve the water that is attached to our properties. No.
Yeah. So it's pretty inexpensive to join the South Valley Regional Association of Acequias. We have a $15 lifetime membership. Once you join, you can't quit. That's our motto. It's like the motto. Once you're in, you can't leave. All right. So we don't charge annual membership fees so that we don't purge anybody from membership. And the second thing is a water right declaration only costs $10 to file with the state engineer. So that's the other part. So those two things. As Angelina said, she recently, her and her husband filed their water right declaration. The state engineer is actually coming out and taking a look. So like I said earlier, you need to actually have restored your land to irrigation before filing a declaration. So let's remember that's going to be part now of the process. They didn't used to come out and look. In fact, they would just rubber stamp the declaration. But as noted, things are different now, right? And because that was in 2005. So here we are 15 years later, and we're up again. And you know what was predicted is here, both by the ancients, you know, and their knowledge of the Quinto Sol, and where we're at today, as such, as well as the scientific and hydrological predictions. This is it. So let's hold on to our water. Let's keep it here in our community for our own community economic development.
Mhm.
Thank you, Santiago. It's
Certainly.
Sarah. Okay,
Yeah,
take
one of
care.
our
It was-
commissionadas. Yeah, right out.
It was really good. Thank you.
Mhm.
See you.
Bueno,
Sara,
bye-bye.
Thank you.
pues if there are no more questions, we're gonna make sure to take some notes and share the documents with the participants. And if there's any questions you guys might have, I mean, I'm sure that you guys have our emails. If not, we'll be happy to communicate with you and share. Jake, Santiago basically lay it out on how it needs to be for your property. We'll probably have a link to the recording. I don't know if you got everything, but if you did, right on. If you didn't, we'll have the recording so you can go over that Santiago uses an example on your property.
Gracias, Jorge. Gracias, Santiago. Thank you.
Certainly, Jake.
Yeah.
Santiago, I
One
think
last thing, in October, we'll be holding elections, biannual elections. And it's really important that Parciantes stand for election so that we can fill those positions of commissioners and mayordomo and protect our water rights based on the bylaws that we've all adopted. So we'll be working on that, and we'll be doing a governance workshop in August, no, Jorge? So that
Yes.
on
Yeah,
how that system works.
Sí, perdón, Santiago. We're going to be, like I said, our goal is to really spread the understanding of the acequia culture, history, and values, no? Because that's what's really important, not just the water. I mean, the water on its own is already important enough, right? But it's not just the ownership of the water. It's how we're going to take care of the water. And there are many elements to the acequia culture that we have to have present all the time to reorganize acequias, because we're reorganizing a system that predates our modern society, no? And so in order to go back and reestablish something from basically another time, even though it's just a few hundred years ago, right? It's still a different mentality. And so the aspect of the understanding of the mayordomo, the governance, all of these things, we want to continue organizing these workshops. So at least we have an understanding, and eventually, so we can have these 5 acequias fully reestablished. You know, Santiago says acequias are there are sub-political divisions of the state, no? And just to quote my uncle Pablo Lopez, no? These are some of the most, you know, elaborate and open democratic systems with respect to what we call democracy, right? And it's not only an asset that brings culture and community and closeness, but it's also an economic asset that we can preserve for the community as well as the spiritual aspect of it, no? So it's beautiful to know that that's what we have in this community, and I think that is extremely unique, no? But without fully understanding of the complexity of acequias from then, or the thinking then, the thinking now, is difficult. So we'll reach out with more workshops and more opportunities to learn about the acequias. And if there is anything that you guys need for some of you like Jake along the way, let us know. You know, we're here to help and to keep moving the need to protect and preserve our the land and the water here in this South Valley community.
Nice
¿Algo más,
one.
Santiago?
Sí, I'm done.
Muy bien. No, pues muchas gracias, Santiago. As always, thank you very much. It's good to have this opportunity, and I personally been looking forward to this type of approach.
Mhm.
So we can continue expanding the well, I said the fight, no, but it's not in the radical sense, no. The fight already happened, no, but the implementation of the things that we agreed on with the MRGDC and the communities, we're looking forward. And I think that this is gonna, you know, this is continuing with these spaces will help us to eventually have a very vibrant and powerful acequias fully organized. I believe that. And so thank you everyone for signing in, coming in on Sunday. I know it's hard. Today everybody should be resting and doing something else, but this is the only time that we had available. So thank you very much for your participation. Gracias, Santiago.
Bueno, bye. Let me flash you guys. El agua no se vende, el agua se defiende. There you go.
Thank you.